Today I'm going to do something I haven't done for quite a while, which is a technique analysis video on someone's technique that they've sent in. They've also sent in some questions as well that we can answer. And from this video today, you're going to see essentially what technique areas to prioritize, how to prioritize these in your training, also how to work on these areas as an intermediate archer, and also how to find out whether it's worth spending money on equipment and what equipment you should spend money on. So there's a lot to cover in this video today, but I'm sure a lot of people are going to get lots of benefit from it as well, because all the different things kind of come together and you're going to see exactly what I mean with that in the end. So we're going to get to the videos here. So Joshua, the archer that's kindly sent these videos in, he sent them in and he's also sent in some questions that I'm going to kind of go through in a minute. First of all, I just want to watch the video with you to show you essentially Joshua's technique so you can have a look. So let's first of all look at this 6 o'clock view from behind. So from behind the shooting line, let's watch Joshua's technique. So the first thing you'll notice is there's quite a lean backwards along the shooting line. It's kind of like Joshua's leaning back onto the heels here. So I'll let it play through, but essentially you can see that already. Also, you'll see on the next shot, even if I go actually to this first shot here, you'll see there's a little bit of shaking in the elbow here, just as Joshua is expanding through and shooting. So that's one thing to note. If you've got other things maybe that you're kind of mentally noting as well, that's good. So we can go through that in a minute. So let's watch one more shot from this view. Let's scroll through to the end of the end, and we'll watch this final shot of the end here. And again, you can see this lean is actually maybe a little bit more now. It's looking maybe potentially a little bit more, a little bit of wobbling in that elbow and then on the release as well. So this is the 6 o'clock view. Let's have a look at this front view here. So we'll go to the first arrow of the end here and we'll press play. So you can see generally from this view, the stance looks good in terms of the feet on the floor. The lift from the foot looked okay as well. You can see that lean back from the target and you can see a little bit of that wobble as well. So let's go to the second shot of the end. Let's now just look at the wobble. So coming in here, look at how much the bow is just shaking around a little bit of a, there's instability there for sure. And you can see kind of in the left bicep there as Joshua, as you're shooting as well. So we'll watch one more from this view just to watch. Now let's just pay attention to the bow hand and the draw hand as Joshua is lifting the bow from the foot. So we'll watch that, lifting up here and then coming into setup, draw. Okay. Now, this is the 3 o'clock view. Finally, we're going to look at the back view here. And you'll notice a couple of things here, a little bit of the lean back. And I want you to just have a look at the bow shoulder as well in a second on the next shot. So we'll come back here. Now watch the bow shoulder. On the raise, slightly back away from the target and you'll see it kind of pushes back towards the spine through the draw as well. So these are the videos and I want to kind of cover the main points now. Obviously everyone watching, you've probably seen some things as well that you want to mention or kind of mentally note. But there's a couple of key things here. Joshua actually mentioned he had a couple of questions and I've got them here just so I remember, but he said, it feels like my posture is off and my shoulders aren't good. That was one of the main things he wanted to talk about. And he said the draw doesn't feel consistent. It feels awkward, essentially, the draw of the bow. So every time he's drawing the bow, raising up, it doesn't feel consistent. There's some questions about equipment, which we'll get to in a little bit later. And in terms of I asked about if there's any injuries, that kind of thing. He said, it feels like a rock is grinding in my bow shoulder. And there's a lack of strength in my bow shoulder. So, sorry, the lack of strength is a note that I added, which I want to talk about. But he said it feels like there's a rock grinding in my bow shoulder. So, what I want to start with, let's just kind of park those technique kind of questions that Joshua had. Let's just overall look at the technique now, and I want to give my kind of initial feedback and then dial down a bit. So, initially, Joshua, you've got a great kind of foundation of your technique. You can see that you've spent a lot of time and you know what you're looking for in the technique, but I think you need some help in terms of getting that execution on the technique. So, for example, what I mean is the steps of the technique look really good in terms of, going from the bow on the foot here going from the bow on the foot and lifting it when we get to it here. So lifting up here looks good. The overall kind of movement, your position in terms of the T here, if we kind of draw some lines, in terms of this T and this looks decent, bit leaning back from the target, but decent. And you can see overall, like for example, the hooking looks good as well. The bow hand in the grip looks okay. So generally there's a good understanding and a good shot here. And the draw, actually, although it doesn't feel that consistent, looks okay as well. But the thing that's letting you down the most, so although this is going to be a technique video, the thing that's letting you down the most is strength. And this actually explains, this is going to be the number one thing from today, but this explains why the draw feels so inconsistent and awkward. The number one thing is strength here, because let's just have a look here on the first shot of the end. So Joshua said, I think his libs are 38 pounds. The poundage scale measures 42, but he thinks it's a bit higher because his draw length is very long. So it's probably somewhere around like 43, 44 pounds. Let's now just have a look on this first shot of the end coming in here. I'm just going to zoom in and scroll over. Let's just look at this bow side in particular and look at the bow. Look at the arm movement and the amount of bow movement. And because of this as well, in terms of strength, something I didn't highlight yet, but this is a key thing. Joshua said he was feeling a little bit kind of unsure as to what was causing errors in competition, that sort of thing. One of the big things from this is the actual moment of execution. Essentially, at the moment, there's a collapse when you're shooting. So if you imagine when you're releasing, you want that clean release backwards. You don't want any kind of forward movement. I've exaggerated that just when I'm demoing it, but that's what we've got here in the video, because if you watch closely, I'm going to zoom in here and I'll just go frame by frame through, and you'll see this is full draw, and then there's a bit of a collapse forwards, and you can also see that the bow shoulder kind of unwinds, if you like, and then there's the shot. So there's kind of like a collapse and then a shot. It's very clear to see from the back view, probably even more. So if we kind of zoom in and we go to here, and we just get to that moment of release, and we're going to go frame by frame again. So you can see there's just a little bit of that shaking here on the expansion, and then there. So you see on the moment of release, if I scroll up, see that collapse. So you see the elbow is physically, this is full draw, and then I'm going to play through about 4 or 5 frames there. So you see the elbow actually goes towards the target and collapses, and that also is going to happen at the same as that's happening. It's very unusual for someone to only collapse on this back elbow. It's very unusual that only one side collapses. What's happening here, and this happens a lot of the time, is one side collapses and also the other one collapses on that bow shoulder as well. So it's kind of hard. It's a bit chicken and egg to say, is the bow shoulder line making the draw side collapse, or is the draw side collapse making the bow shoulder collapse? Essentially, it's always hard to find exactly which one is the cause, but you need to get the alignment good and get the strength good and have both strong. That's what we want. So this strength thing is going to play a massive part in this, because even on that, like I was saying here, even on that first draw, we could see that, if I actually go to the screen, we could see that wobbling here on that first shot. So this is going to be a really big part. And what I would actually say is you probably need to focus on this even at the expense of everything else, because technique-wise, I feel like you have a decent understanding, and by focusing on the strength side, focusing on bow training, which is what I'm going to get to in a second, you'll actually improve your whole technique anyway as well. So this is the massive thing, because this amount, it's really hard for me to kind of explain how important it is to be still in terms of not having any wobbling, that kind of thing, and also to be strong in the position. The description earlier that you mentioned about the bow shoulder having kind of like a grinding feeling, definitely don't want that. And I can see why that's happening, because essentially you're being pushed backwards like this as you're raising the bow and as you're drawing, because of essentially you're kind of leaning back, and then the strength as well. Your bow shoulder is being pushed back like this, and then on release you've also got a bit of a kick. So I can understand why you would feel that in your bow shoulder. When we also go to this 9 o'clock view here, we can see that if I zoom in, it might be a bit easier for you to see, but you can see this bow shoulder. I'll play it on half speed because it's a little bit fast. But if you watch the scapula here, if I kind of just draw around it, but if you watch the back of the scapular blade here, as Joshua, as you're drawing, you'll see it actually comes back towards the spine. So we'll raise up here and you'll see it kind of shifting back here. The height of your bow shoulder is very good, but that shifting back is essentially, you're kind of in like a weak position from the target. So at the moment, the simplest thing I would give you is if you just changed what you're doing in your training and increased your strength, you could improve your scores and your shooting massively without any technique changes at all. That's the first thing. So what I want to now mention about is how you would do that, and then I want to get into some of the other technique points and the equipment questions as well. So what I would do, Joshua said, let me just check what he said here. He shoots about 150 arrows a day, about 1,000 arrows per week, and he bow trains twice per week. But when we look at these videos, the strength is just not there. Sorry, Joshua, but I need to be honest to give you the feedback so that you can improve. So that strength not being there is causing that execution problem, and it's causing a lot of the kind of leaning back, that kind of thing. So essentially, you need to prioritize the bow training, and you need to get to the point where you can comfortably do, I would say at least 7 7+2s. So the 7+2, I think I mentioned this before, but if I go to the full screen here, 7+2 is you draw your bow, you come up and you draw your bow and you hold for 7 seconds, and you use a metronome to do this so that you don't cheat, because when you're doing a full draw hold, everyone seems to come in and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, because it's difficult, especially as you get more tired. So you put a metronome on, every second there'll be a beep, and you come in, the string touches the face, and after the string touches the face, then you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2. So that's why it's called a 7+2. You hold for 7 and then 1, 2. With the going down, the drawing down, you don't draw down fully. It's just going from your full draw, slightly forward, slightly backward. But it's important to keep the tempo as well. Some people get too slow in this bit and then they go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it kind of messes up the whole thing. So you do that 7+2. You want at least 7, potentially 8 would be better of those to really get a hold of your technique. I imagine at the moment, with the amount of wobble, it's going to be hard to get. Maybe 2 or 3 is going to be difficult here. So you need a lot of work on that. And the way to do that is to slowly build up through weeks and weeks and weeks. So the bow training is going to let you do that. For example, you can do, there's a couple of different things I would say. You need a session per week where you're focused on longer holds. So for example, not with your current bow, but maybe a lighter bow, you focus on the right technique and you hold for 30 seconds. Then you rest for 30 seconds and then you hold for 30 seconds. And you rest for 30 seconds and you hold for 30 seconds. And maybe it's not your current bow, but then you work towards, you go up in time and eventually you'll get to your current bow weight. The other thing that you need to do is to practice having the expansion part with the arrow through the clicker as well. So I'd also recommend doing maybe one session. So you could have, for example, I was going to say Monday, Wednesday, Friday. But in your case, Joshua, I think it would be better to shoot less and focus on your technique with some drills, still do some shooting, but actually do bow training every day, essentially, and slowly progress. So maybe, for example, Monday, you could have like a rest day on Wednesday, for example. So you could do Monday, Tuesday, rest on Wednesday from bow training. So you could still shoot. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, do bow training. And then Sunday, have a full rest from everything. Something like that. Because you've got enough time through the week. But just shooting 80 or 100 arrows in a day is not getting you any physical conditioning. And obviously that's what's kind of a challenge here. So you need to do those expansions as well, where you draw up, you expand through the clicker, you click, and then you hold and carry on expanding and then come down. And you're practicing as you're doing those, not having that flinch as well. Ideally, you would do this aiming at a target while you're doing the bow training. So what I would do is shoot a little bit, work on your technique with some drills to start with a light bow at close range, then do some shooting, and then finish your session. Your session won't be long in terms of the shooting, but then finish your session with a hard bow training session, aiming at the target, because you're already going to be there after doing the shooting, so you can aim at the target, practice also that final bit and keeping that shot essentially. And then finally, the other bow training session you want to work in there is using a form master or a shot trainer, so you're not relying on your fingers, but you're leading from the elbow, and this is going to help you bring your elbow around more and your scapula around more. So doing the bow training like that, you've got fingers, the long holds, you've got the expansions, and then you've also got the shot trainer using the elbow. That's going to kind of cover all bases, and you want to basically prioritize that bow training above all else and work on your technique as well. And essentially you want to separate the things out, because at the moment, because of how you're shooting at the moment, if you've got an hour or an hour and a half a day, you're kind of going to shoot and you're trying to work on both your technique and your strength at the same time. Because you're not strong enough, every shot is quite hard, and that means you can't do the technique how you want. But also you don't have enough training time to get the volume and to get the intensity for your technique, for your physical conditioning, sorry. So then you can't get that side either. So it's kind of like you're not getting either from the training sessions, and you need to separate out and say, what is the goal of today's training session? I'm going to work on physical, and I'm going to use the bow training to do that. Or I'm going to work on my technique, and I'm going to use the drills and what the technique feedback is going to be in a second to work on that. So it's a different way of doing it. So now that I've mentioned about the bow training, I just want to highlight that is going to be the number one thing. You can ignore all of the technique stuff that's to come. The bow training is going to be the number one thing, because you won't be able to do the technique stuff I'm about to tell you without getting stronger in the first place. So that's what I wanted to mention there. And then now as well, I want to get into some of the technique things as well. So let's go to this view here. Posture and not leaning back like this is going to be a big thing here, because you have what I would call is like a defensive posture at the moment. You're leaning back along the shooting line, you're leaning onto the heels, which is putting you in a weak position, and doing that makes the bow shoulder more likely to come back. So this is one of the reasons why you're feeling the bow shoulder like that. And then also, if we go to the other angle here, if we go like this, you can also see when you then raise here, this looks good, head position looks good, spine looks good, and then when you raise, there's quite a lean back here as well. And that's overall your defensive in both positions, in terms of your defensive away from the target this way, and your defensive along the shooting line onto your heels as well. So this is not where you want to be, where you're kind of having that kind of arch in the back, kind of like this. You want it to be straighter, and I've actually got a picture here to show you. This is more like what you want. You want the kind of anchor, so the knock and the hand position is, you can see this kind of orange highlighted line here is slightly over onto the balls of the feet, and this blue line here indicates that there's a very slight lean forwards, and notice that the back is flat as well and the core is engaged. So I'd strongly recommend reading through this stance and posture section on my Online Archery Academy website. You can go on and just read through it, but this is going to be a big, part of your technique. Having that central posture and keeping it as you raise the bow is going to be really important, because if you lose that posture, you won't be able to feel when your bow shoulder is coming back, and this is going to cause some of that grinding and that kind of issue as well, like you mentioned. So you need to have that posture. And then if we go back to this video here, when you're then drawing the bow, you need to maintain that forward direction from your bow shoulder and not allow this scapula to come back like it does at the moment. You need to maintain that, and the best way to work on it is to start with a band and a light bow to get the feeling. Take your t-shirt off. Do this on your own if you want, obviously. Take your t-shirt off and have a video delay on the back and see what your scapula is doing. Because with a t-shirt, it can be hard to tell. I can see it quite easily because I've watched too many people shoot. But without the t-shirt, you can see the scapula come back, and you can see if you're doing it well and get that feedback for yourself as well. So that's what I would work on in terms of the technique. To kind of summarize the main things is this leaning back. You want a more active posture. You want your core engaged, and you want to maintain this bow shoulder in particular so that it's not coming away from the target. That's what I wanted to mention there, because those key things, they're really going to play into the overall strength And then also the drills that I gave you with the bow training is going to help that expansion and the release as well. So the final thing is going to be that release. From this point of view, we mentioned it earlier where the elbow is going forwards. That drill with the bow training is really going to help, but also using a shot trainer. I can see, by the way, you were using this arrow in the elbow device, which is really good. But overall, at the moment, you kind of relax a bit on release. Instead of relaxing on the release, like this, at the moment, you kind of get in, expanding here, and then on release, everything goes like a little bit soft and has that collapse. So maybe it's not too easy to see at the moment, but if you watch closely, it's that kind of relax, uncoiling, and then the rest of the follow through. So you definitely want to be more active on the release and keep everything kind of directed a lot more. So you need to practice that again with a lighter bow, with the shot trainer where you actually release the fingers off the string, and then you'll be able to translate it to your normal weight bow as well. So that's what I would mention there. Now, before we get onto some of the equipment things, I do want to mention, if you're watching this video, you've probably heard me mention about my Online Archery Academy members community, but recently I've actually upgraded this community. So if we actually go, I don't know if I've got it up here. So I've actually moved the community to a new space here. So you can actually get all the guides and stuff that you got previously, but nicely organized into sections, that kind of thing. You can sort by different topics, for example, and find what you need to look at. So this is really good. But what you can also get now is, I won't show you because these are private coaching spaces, but you can upgrade your membership and get coaching from Steve Weiler, and Alec Potts, one-to-one private coaching within the community. So not only do you get the resources and the guides and that kind of thing, but if you like this kind of video that I'm doing now, where I'm going through the analysis of someone's technique, giving them feedback points, this is exactly what you can get inside this community from Steve Weiler and Alec Potts at the moment. So I'd strongly recommend, I'd have a look here. If I go to members.onlinearcheryacademy.com is the website. So it's going to load up here and you can see it's asking me to log in. So I want this one. So this is the page you'll see as a non-member at the moment, but essentially there's a video kind of explaining how everything works, and depending on what you want, you can join for $3.99 a month just for the resources and access to Q&As, which I normally do. So if you just want that one, or if you want coaching, there's different memberships. So for £59 a month, you get a feedback essentially per month from Steve Weiler or Alec Potts. For £99 a month, you get 2 feedbacks, so one every fortnight. Or if you want a feedback every week, you can join the Platinum membership as well. So this is really, really exciting because I wanted to make excellent, world-class coaching available to more people. And this platform allows me to do that and allows Steve and Alec, and also in the future, I'm going to add more coaches as well. It allows those people to share all the knowledge that they've gained through shooting about 1 million arrows in their life. And it also allows archers all around the world to get excellent feedback, because I know how difficult it is to get great coaching as well. And there's only so many kind of coaching slots that I can do. So this is a great way to share that with more archers. So I'd strongly recommend you to check that out as well. It's members.onlinearcheryacademy.com. And yeah, I'd strongly recommend you to check that out. If not, go to my website. You can get a free email newsletter. Pop your email in here. I send a 3 tips newsletter out every Friday, which I'm going to write after this email. And also check out my courses as well. You can go to onlinearcheryacademy.com, click explore the courses. I've got an advanced course and a beginner's course as well, if you haven't checked those out already, but you've probably heard me talk about that before. Back to the video though, in terms of the equipment, we've got some questions as well. So let's close some of those down. And this is going to come over to the equipment side. So Josh had some kind of issues and he wasn't sure with this feedback if some of the issues he was having was with the equipment, and he wasn't sure if it was because of the equipment or because of technique essentially. So I've showed the technique and I've showed the kind of physical conditioning side of things. A massive part of this is going to come from the strength, and there definitely are technique things to work on as well. Normally, when it comes to equipment, I'm quite anti-equipment. And what I mean by that is I don't like to encourage people to have to spend loads on equipment because it's not the most important thing. It just isn't. Often it doesn't make that much difference. However, in this example, I want to share with you some of the stuff that Josh sent through. For example, let's just go. Joshua asked about his points. So he's got, I can't remember which model, but some Fivix arrows, and the points are a bit damaged, as you can see here. And he was asking, does this make an impact? Is it worth fixing, essentially? So those are the points. And also he said he got the wrong biter button, so he had to add a collar to the biter button to make the distance correct for the center shot. So is that an issue? Also, he mentioned, you can kind of see it in one of the videos, but he mentioned as well that his string here, you can see, is pretty frayed. You can see it's fraying quite a lot. Center serving is kind of unraveling. He said the knocking point wasn't great, and the string was about 6 months old, even though he shoots every day. Like, is that an issue? He also said, is it worth, so this is a Sebastian flute riser, and he said, is it worth getting, this is where it makes sense now, a Velator V2 Fivix riser? Would that actually improve shooting? He also said about the sight that he's got is the Win WNS sight, and it kind of rattles and vibrates loose and kind of moves. Is it worth getting a, I've actually changed the page here, but a Shibuya RC3. Shibuya RC3, which is this one, I believe. So he asked, is it worth essentially spending the money to get one of these sights? Because obviously it's going to rattle less and hopefully be better. So there's a lot of different questions there. The first thing I want to say is definitely with the points, if we go to here, this is an issue. And the reason I wanted to cover this equipment stuff is people don't spend enough attention in terms of maintaining their equipment, and stuff like this is really important. Not only is the point going to affect the arrow flight a bit, and if the point is this damaged, it's probably bent as well, but actually it's just a different length. So every arrow is, I mean, this arrow is going to take longer to pull through the clicker than this one. And also this one, and also see this one here where it's got this kind of like a dent in the end of the point, that is going to feel horrible on the end of the clicker. And when you're expanding through, it's probably going to make you a little bit flinchy, which is not really what you want. So definitely the points need addressing here. I'd also say the arrows, the best thing you can do is get good arrows. That's the number one thing to spend money on for equipment. So let me just give you a rundown of some of the things. We've got the sight here. For the sight, I agree. There's not a picture of the sight, but in the video you can see it. The WNS, Win make great equipment. This sight is not one of them. I don't like this sight. So I would strongly recommend, don't get an Ultima RC3, because, I mean, you can, but they are quite expensive. You would be much better off saving the money and getting a Shibuya dual click. There's a number of reasons I like this, but it's super solid. The fact that it's a dual click makes people move their sight the right amount, because everyone basically doesn't move their sight enough. And by using a dual click, you're more likely to move the correct amount because every click is twice the amount. But also it's less than half the price. And for that extra money that you're saving, I would get a second-hand dual click probably. That would be ideal. You could probably get one for under £100. And then you save the money and get arrows with it. That's what I would do. Save the money, get arrows instead. Now, in terms of the bow, yes, you probably would be better off, instead of the Sebastian flute, getting a, where's it gone? Velator V2. Again, though, I would actually suggest, people I think are a little bit apprehensive about getting second-hand equipment. If it was me personally, I would look for a second-hand Hoyt GMX, or second-hand Win AXT, or second-hand Win ATF, or maybe a second-hand Fivix Titan. The build quality is going to be a bit better. There's going to be less issues probably with limb alignment, that kind of thing. But especially with the Wins in particular are so good with the straightness of the risers and the limb alignment that those are really what I'd recommend. And you could probably, again, save that extra bit of money so that you can get the arrows. So personally what I would do, I didn't answer about the button yet, but this button isn't an issue. That's, I mean, maybe you don't like how it looks, but that's fine. It's just adding a bit of distance to the center shot that you need, and that's not a problem at all. So that looks good. I wouldn't worry about the button. I would upgrade the sight, but to a dual click. I would get a second-hand riser to save the money, and then I'd focus on the arrows. I wouldn't get, so Joshua said as well that he said about getting some arrows, about getting some non-Eastern arrows. I can't remember. I think they were Fivix arrows, that kind of like a model that I hadn't heard of. And he asked about getting those. But again, I would really try and get Eastern ACEs or X10s. Those are really the two best ones. At the moment for where you are, Joshua, because you're going to maybe adjust things a bit, I would get maybe some ACEs, some second-hand X10s even, is going to be better than a new set of some of the less good arrows. I know that sounds crazy, but that's kind of how it is. So that's what I would go with there. And with the string, if we go back to the video here, with the string, maintaining your string and maintaining your fletches and your points and that kind of thing, really important. So yeah, you can't really shoot like this because it's just gonna, you just don't know what's going wrong. You don't know whether it's the equipment or the technique. So eliminate the issue of the equipment by maintaining it much better and paying, if you pay close attention and care to your equipment, then you can trust that when you do a good shot and it goes in the middle, you're like, okay, that makes sense. So you're getting the right feedback. When you do a bad shot and it feels good, you know, okay, I was doing the right thing. Probably something on the equipment, maybe the arrow's dodgy, maybe the fletches need replacing, that kind of thing. So normally I'm very anti-equipment, but there are definitely some things here that are affecting your shooting in your equipment. So that's why I wanted to address this. That being said, the number one thing is going to be the bow training. That's going to be the number one thing in getting stronger. Everything else pales in comparison to that. So I really encourage you to focus on that and prioritize get unreasonably strong and unreasonably in control of your bow so that it's almost impossible for you not to improve your shooting. If you get so in control of your bow that you're at full draw and you can expand nicely, you can hold for longer if you need to, if it's windy, you can come down, you can shoot arrows, you can shoot like 10 arrow ends for an hour and not get tired. You need to be in that condition in order to be able to improve your technique as well. So I know it's a little bit of a long video today, but I wanted to give this feedback on a number of different areas. We've got the technique area, we've got the equipment area, we've got the training area and how to kind of structure that. But I hope that was useful for you, Joshua. I hope that was useful to everyone watching as well. And if you haven't checked it out already, definitely check out that membership if you want coaching from Steve Weiler or Alec Potts as well, that I mentioned. So that's members.onlinearcheryacademy.com. I hope this was useful, and I'll see you in the next video.